Hi, hello, and welcome to Lily's Library. So today we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So before we get into the tag, I thought I'd check in on my physical TBR as well as how many books I've read this year. So I've read 40 books out of my goal of 52, so we are 13 ahead of schedule according to Storygraph, but I am really happy with how many books I've read. I'm hoping to read a lot more in the coming months and see how we can go. I'd like to read a bit more than I did last year, but I'm really not going to be trying too hard. But as for my physical TBR, I have 171 unread books on it. So I'll try and put the number on the screen of what I think I started the year with, but I think I did forget to save that number. So we'll see how we go. I'd like to get that number down a lot before the end of the year, maybe to below 150, but we'll see how we go. My original goal was below 100, but that's not going to happen. So we're just going to get straight into the questions. The first one is simultaneously the easiest and also the hardest question, and that is the best book I've read so far this year. Now, I couldn't just pick one, hence why it's hard, but I've got two books I wanted to talk about here, just so I'm trying to spread out my answers and book selections across questions. But one of the first ones I wanted to speak about is actually one of the first books I read this year, and that is The Buffalo Hunter, Hunted by Stephen Graham Jones. He is one of my favorite horror authors. I'm hoping to read a lot more of his books this year, but this was just such an absolutely incredible horror. It's one of the most unique vampire books I've ever read, and I found it to be really interesting, especially kind of off of the back of Sinners and how obsessed I was with that last year, and still am obsessed. Having something else with very unique vampires and a very different look at it was just such a fascinating and cool read. I've spoken a bit about this lately and over the past couple months, but this is told through letters and journal entries, and we split between being in present day and in the early 1900s, and it has to do with the colonial American period and a story of revenge. Like I said, it's also got to do with vampires and has some very unique and interesting vampire lore in it, and I just loved it so much. It is probably my favorite book of the year. At least so far. I feel like that could change in a couple of months. But after that, I've got one I read not long after that actually, which is The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. This is actually a debut. It came out at the beginning of the year. This is a dark Chinese-inspired fantasy, and it is absolutely incredible. Similar, I don't know if I said, but The Buffalo Hunter made me feel so many emotions, and this also did the same in very different but similar ways at the same time. But this is, like I said, a Chinese-inspired fantasy. It is very heavy and very dark. It's something that you definitely need to check your content warnings for before you pick it up. But it is just such a beautiful and interesting read. We follow a young girl who ends up being chosen to be this crown princess concubine, and he's one of the most feared princes in this country. He's meant to be violent. He killed his own mum. He's killed hundreds of thousands of people over the course of his life in battles, and she has to try and design a poem to kill him. But in order to do that, she has to know his heart because it's a love poem. And it is just so interesting and brutal and insane. The last kind of like little chunk of the book was such a fun and unique and interesting way to end and how it all wrapped up. It was just such an incredible book, and I really did not expect it to end how it did. Moving on, we've got the best sequel I've read. Now, I actually haven't read that many sequels this year, but there was one very clear answer of those very limited books I have read, and that was The Battle Drum by Sarah El-Arifi. I feel like if you've been watching my recent videos, you know this is no surprise. I read this a couple of months ago and loved it so much. I really enjoyed the first book, The Final Strife, and I thought The Ending Fire was a good way to wrap it up as well, but this book is such a standout in that trilogy. Just the way everything shifts and changes and the characters in this world grow, and it's just so incredible. It was also very emotional as well. I think this is one of the few books that actually did make me cry, which you'll see a bit later, but this was just absolutely incredible. This is set in a world where the color of your blood determines your place in society, and we follow three different women from these three different sectors, and it is just really interesting seeing how they kind of unite and join together to kind of overthrow this corrupt government and to change the way this world is ruled. It is just so fascinating and interesting, and if you read these books, you will know why this book is the best, but it's just absolutely incredible. It's very hard to talk about without spoiling anything, but just the way it expands upon everything in this world, like the lore, the characters, and it just opens so much more up. It's such an incredible read. Okay, moving on to my biggest disappointment of the year. I feel like this was actually a really hard one because I've had a few books that I've really loved, but then there has been quite a lot of books that I thought were just fine and weren't really anything special. And I think that's kind of the one where it has disappointed me because I had such high expectations for this book. And that was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I thought I would absolutely love this book. I thought it would be a new favorite of mine. It's something that's got so many rave reviews, and I can see why so many people love it. It just really didn't work for me. I feel like Octavia Butler's books are hit or miss for me. I mean, I've only read 2 of them, but I do seem to struggle with her writing a little bit. But I definitely do want to give the second book a go, Parable of the Talents. I did actually try reading it off of the back of this, but was really struggling and just wasn't in the right mood. So I might try and get a copy of it for myself or borrow it from the library again and try again. But I don't think this was a bad book. I think the writing is very beautiful. I think the storyline was really interesting. I think there was a very well done scene where there is this bushfire or wildfire that our characters are fleeing from. That was very tense and so well done and so vivid. But just something about this just didn't work out for me. And like I said, I thought I would enjoy it a lot more. So in that sense, it's a bit disappointing. Next up is the books that surprised me the most. I've got 2 of them here for it because I wasn't really expecting to love these and enjoy these as much as I did. The first one is Love Galaxy. This one is by Sierra Brahman. This is one I actually read as an ARC and I devoured it. I thought it was so fun. It's the perfect blend of sci-fi and romance with murder mystery as well. And I just had a really good time with it. I actually just realized a theme between these 2 books that surprised me. But I've been really finding myself enjoying these kind of murder mystery books. So I think this was why it was such a pleasant surprise, because for the longest time, there was something that I didn't really gravitate towards in media at all. But over the past year or so, I've been really enjoying it. And this one was just such a pleasant surprise. It was so fun and witty and fast-paced and just such an interesting and engaging plot. This is set in an intergalactic dating show, kind of like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, where the 2 people that our competitors are competing for is the crown prince and princess of this universe and this kingdom. And one of our main characters, she is from a backwater planet and she gets paid to go on the show in order to win the prince's heart, but she ends up starting to fall for the princess. But there's also mixed in a lot of murder as well as government corruption and politics, and I just found it to be so fun and interesting, as well as pretty sad and heartfelt at times as well. It was just such a fascinating read and just a perfect blend of genres. Now, like I said, there is a theme between the next book I'm going to be talking about and Love Galaxy. The next one is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This was a very recent read. This is another murder mystery, another thing where the people involved slowly start getting picked off. And I just really enjoyed this. I thought this was a very pleasant surprise as well. It's got the perfect found family elements. It's very queer as well, like Love Galaxy. And I just had such a good time with it. Now, the reason that this was a big surprise for me is because I'd seen lots of mixed reviews. This is actually the Lumicrate edition, and I was going to read it immediately once I got it, but it was getting a few mixed reviews, so I'm like, I'm going to take a pause and step away from it for a bit so I'm not going to be swayed and I can form my own opinion. And I'm so happy I waited because I had such a great time with this. In this, we've got 12 different heirs to 12 different parts of this kingdom, and they all go on a ship to do this journey that happens every year or every time there is a new generation of the Blessed. And slowly these people start dying one by one, and our main character has to figure out why they're dying. Our main character is also hiding a secret that he is actually not blessed. And it is just so interesting seeing everything unravel and seeing these dynamics and relationships between the characters. Everyone is so funny and interesting, and I really loved how unique the premise was in this and the magical abilities and seeing everyone interact. It was just such a fun read. I think what really made this for me as well was the audiobook. The narration was just absolutely incredible. Okay, next question is new releases that I own and haven't read yet. Now, I've got a few of these actually. I've been a bit bad with it this year, but there's 2 in particular I wanted to talk about. The first one is the newest release out of these 2 that I've got, and that is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. This is her newest book. This is a martial sci-fi, I guess. It's like a samurai sci-fi. It's about a retired mercenary who gets sent in to do one last contract, and that's kind of all I know. It's something that really intrigued me, and I'd heard some really good reviews about it, and I absolutely love the Greenbone saga, so it's something I'm really hoping I can get to soon. It's just a bit intimidating with how long it is because I have been reading a few longer books at the moment, but this is one I definitely want to try and read before the year is out. The next new release is actually one I got given an ARC of and didn't get around to that I'm hoping I can really soon, and that is The Ascension of Souls. This is by Bronte Marie Wesson. This is actually by an Australian author. It is book 1 in the Broken Cycle trilogy. This is a queer fantasy, and I've heard really good things about it as well. I actually have the audiobook from my library that I need to renew my loan of, and I think I'm going to try and do a tandem read of it, but I don't 100% remember what this is about. I know it has to do with prophecies and trying to right the world, and it does sound very interesting, and I have seen good reviews, like I said, so I'm really hoping I can get to this one soon. June, but this one came out in March, so it's been on my TBR for quite a while now. The next question is my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. Now, I feel like I'm really bad at actually keeping track of new releases. I'm always so excited when the announcement happens, but then I completely forget about them because I don't write it down. So I really need to actually start keeping track of that. But there's two that I specifically want to be talking about. One, I believe, is actually already out in the US and the UK, but for me in Australia, the release date got pushed back and it's not coming out until the end of this month. And that one is The Tapestry of Fate by Shannon Chakraborty, or S.A. Chakraborty. This is the sequel to The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, which I read a couple of years ago and absolutely loved, and I had such a great time with it. And I just have been dying to have more of her journey and to read more. So this one comes out on July 28th here, and I am very impatiently awaiting it, and I cannot wait to pick it up. I'm so excited. I've heard such great things, and I just cannot wait to read it. The next book I wanted to talk about is one by one of my favorite authors. You can actually see my collection of her books or their books behind me, and that is Victorious by V.E. Schwab. This comes out in October, and I don't know what I'm going to do when this book actually comes out. I love Vicious and Vengeful, and I'm so excited but nervous for this. I was a bit hesitant once I heard this was being in the works and had been announced, just because I feel like things did actually wrap up well in the duology, and I was feeling a bit weird about it being expanded to a trilogy. But I've heard really good reviews. I'm definitely going to be rereading Vicious and Vengeful before then, and I need to get my pre-order in for Victorious to try and find a copy that matches mine. But I am so excited for this one. I've seen so many people getting the ARCs already and reading it, and I have a little bit of FOMO for it, but I'm just so excited for it. I absolutely love V.E. Schwab. I haven't been reading too many of their books lately, but I do really love them and really need to make more progress on them. So I'm hoping that rereading Vicious and Vengeful and then getting to Victorious will inspire me to read the rest of their backlog that I need to catch up on. I actually just thought of another new release that I'm very excited for and can't believe I forgot to mention with the other two straight away, and that is Off the Reservation by Stephen Graham Jones. This is actually kind of a follow-up and a sequel to The Only Good Indians, which I really enjoyed. This one is coming out a bit later in the year. I'm just going to check the release date. It says this one comes out in October as well, so this is another one I'm going to be racing to pre-order soon. I don't really know what happens with this one and what is different to it compared to The Only Good Indians, but it is another one that I am just so excited for and cannot wait to read. The next question is your favorite new author. This is one that I've decided that's new to me, not necessarily a debut one, because there's someone else I wanted to talk about, and that is Uketsu. I ended up reading two of his books. I've got Strange Pictures and Strange Houses. I know Strange Buildings has recently come out, but I haven't picked it up yet, but I devoured these. I went through these so fast, especially Strange Houses. I went through this in like an afternoon. I think just the concept of these is so interesting and fun. You can really see the theme this year with my books. I'm really enjoying those murder mysteries and kind of those mystery ones. So I think these just kind of filled the gap at the right time. I was in just like the perfect mood to pick these up, and I think they were so fun. So Strange Pictures, if you haven't heard about it, this is a mystery told through some strange drawings that were made by a young woman just before her death, and each thing kind of is interconnected, which I really enjoyed piecing it all together. Strange Houses is similar to a degree. In this one, we've got strange floor plans that all link together in the end and have got something that pieces it all together and pieces the mystery together. We've also got characters that are connected between these, and I just thought these are such fun books, and like I said, I really need to get Strange Buildings next, but these were such fun reads. Next up is a book that made you cry. Now, I feel like I haven't had actually any standout answers to this. I feel like last year I read so many books that made me cry, but I think that was because I was reading like most of The Realm of the Elderlings, as well as some books from M.L. Wang, who has some very devastating reads. But I have two answers for this. I don't think I was full sobbing or had tears streaming down my face, but they both definitely made me tear up and feel a lot of emotions. I spoke about them both briefly at the beginning, but the first one is The Battle Drum by Sarah El-Arifi. There's a specific scene in this that I was just so shocked by and did not expect to happen at all, and I think how quickly it caught me off guard was really what brought the tears on. But I can't really tell you why or what happened, but if you have read this book, you probably know what I am talking about. Then the other one is The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. Again, I probably can't talk about the scene that's in this, but there were a lot of tearful moments, especially when it had to do with the buffaloes, and particularly one buffalo or bison in this. Again, if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about, but Stephen Graham Jones just never fails to make me tear up in some capacity. A similar similar thing happened in My Heart is a Chainsaw at the end, and there was definitely some bits that made me feel really tense and very on the edge in The Only Good Indians as well. But yeah, this is a very emotional read. Okay, after books that made me cry, we've got books that made me happy. So kind of the opposite. I feel like a lot of these could also go on that, but I wanted to talk about a quartet that overall made me really happy and just was very sweet and fun and had those beautiful found family vibes that I absolutely love. And that is the Rainwild Chronicles by Robin Hobb. So I read all 4 of these books at the beginning of the year and I just had such a great time with all of these. They were really such a nice break from the really heavy and emotionally distraught things that Robin Hobb usually puts her characters through. So I think this was just a very nice breather and gap and break before going into that final trilogy that I know is going to hurt. These journey through the Rainwilds. We follow a bunch of young Rainwilders who are now the keepers of dragons and are helping them travel up the Rainwild River to find a new home. And there was definitely some sad and some tense moments and some very messed up moments, but overall this series just made me so happy. Just there were so many moments of joy and of these young people really finding a space where they could be themselves that it just really made me feel all warm inside. The next question is the best book adaptation you've watched this year. Now, I don't actually think I have watched too many. I have rewatched all of the Hunger Games movies, but I don't really want to talk about them just because they're ones that I had seen before and I feel like it's not really the purpose of this question entirely, so I'm going to go with a new one, and I feel like there is only really one obvious answer to this, and that is Project Hail Mary. I watched this in cinema when it came out, and it was just so incredible. There definitely was changes from the book, but I think this was a really faithful and really well done adaptation. There were some absolutely beautiful and breathtaking scenes in it, and I just loved having Rocky on the big screen and actually getting to see Rocky and Graceland as characters, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was such a fun and sweet movie and it just really did a good job adapting the book. Okay, we are on to the second last question, and that is the most beautiful books you've bought or acquired this year. I've got 3 different ones that I want to talk about here, so I'm going to start with the one that I've kind of already touched on, and that is The Poet Empress. I read this as an ARC. Like I said, I had a digital copy and I just immediately had to try and get this as soon as I could. It is the most stunning cover ever. This is the UK and Australian edition. I know the US one is different as well, but I think I definitely prefer this. I do like that the US one is kind of more darker and I think in a way matches the vibes a bit more, but this one is absolutely stunning as well. Just these colors together are so breathtakingly beautiful and I love the dragon. It's just such an incredible and stunning cover. Next up, I've got When Sleeping Women Wake. This is by Emily Payin. This again is one I picked up from the op shop and it is just so pretty and beautiful. This is a cover I've always been drawn to and something I've been wanting to pick up for ages. So I was very happy to find it in the op shop for a decent price and it just looks so pretty. I love the details within it, like how the face is actually part of a painting as well, and the flowers and the butterflies and birds. It's just such a beautiful cover and I'm very excited to read this one. And then the last one is The Clan of the Cave Bear. It's one of these really old mass market paperbacks and I just really love these old fantasy ones. I've got a few other books from the series here and the covers are different, but I just love how these look. I think they're so beautiful and just classic, and it's just a very nice one that I wanted to add to my collection. Okay, and then the final question is, what books do I still need to read this year? Obviously there are so many, but I've got 4 here that I wanted to specifically touch on. The first one is one that's actually on my 12 books in 12 month TBR. It has been on this TBR for the past 2 years, and that is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is something I've been needing to read and wanting to read for ages and just haven't got to, so I'm really hoping I can get to this one soon. This is a intergenerational historical fiction. I've also got Breasts and Eggs by Miko Kawakami. I've read one of her books earlier this year, Sisters in Yellow, which is her new release. It's the first book of hers I've read, and I've heard really good things about this. This is actually something my sister's been meaning to get me to read for ages, so it's definitely one I want to pick up. But and then the final 2 books are the second and third book in the Fits in the Fall trilogy. I'm currently reading the first one, so it's also technically included in this, but this is the final trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, which I will definitely be reading and finishing before the year is out. But that is it for the mid-year book freakout tag. Let me know some of your answers to the questions as well. I'd love to hear your responses to them, but make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my other social medias, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.